Hi there, this is my review for the BlueBay Lanzarote Hotel, where we stayed in August 2026 for 1 week. Now straight away I want to apologise because I didn't realise just how windy this holiday was going to be. I have stayed in Lanzarote before, more of the south of the island, and I don't remember it being anywhere near as windy as it was during this holiday, and I didn't pack my sound wind muffler for my GoPro, so apologies about the wind noise. Where needed I will be turning down the volume. Now I've done a couple of hotel reviews before, and normally I wait till the end to give my final verdict, but this one I'm going to do slightly differently and just put it out there. I think this hotel is absolutely fine. When you book a hotel, a holiday, like a lot of people, you go on YouTube, you look at a lot of reviews, you go on TripAdvisor and you read a lot of stuff, and I found there wasn't a lot of stuff out there for this hotel. What is out there tends to be a bit more on the negative side. Now, like a lot of things in life, I think a lot of people are very quick to complain and point out the negatives, and not so quick to point out the positives. So this is a 3-star hotel. Everyone's familiar with the star system, 1 to 5. I saw quite a few reviews putting down the quality of the food, the quality of the rooms, the entertainment, etc. However, it wasn't until after I got back from the holiday I actually looked up what the star system meant, and it turns out a lot of the things that people are putting down you wouldn't actually really get until you get to a 4-star or a 5-star hotel. For example, the quality of the rooms, the length of the entertainment, more options of food, all these little things that people tend to complain about are actually only available on a 4 or even a 5-star hotel. So it's definitely worth taking that into consideration when you're looking at the reviews of this hotel. So with that said, let's start the review. This video is going to contain me walking around, showing you the different blocks. There's 4 blocks that you can stay in, showing you the food area, around the room I stayed in, what the sunbed situation is like, and some other general things. And yes, I will be mentioning what the cockroach situation was like, as we've all seen the reviews. This here is the hotel shop, and it sells the usual things that all hotel shops sell, you know, snacks, inflatables, general stuff that you may want to purchase while on holiday. This screen here just shows you some information about the hotels, times things open and close. You can get that exact screen on your TV in your room. So this is the main reception. I saw a couple of reviews saying that the staff were a little bit rude, a bit blunt. I didn't experience any of that. The few times I spoke to them, very helpful, very polite, no complaints whatsoever. Here you can see the check-in and check-out times, check-out being 12 PM. We did request a late checkout, but unfortunately it wasn't available. I'll be going into it a bit more detail later on in the video, but you've probably seen in the reviews, a lot of people say the same. Unfortunately, they were unable to get a late checkout. You're also provided with the Wi-Fi login details. Now they did say you have 1 email address per device. So for my daughter, for example, that had a phone and a tablet, she registered her email address on her phone, and then when she used the tablet, you just don't do register, you just do login, use the same email address. I'm not too sure if you can use them at the same time though. Now before we arrived at the hotel, I was looking everywhere for a map because I was curious to see the layout of the hotel, where the blocks were, because I've always heard that block A was one of the nicer ones. This is what they give you, a very crude printout, not the best quality. Now it turns out there are no maps in the hotel, hence why there are no pictures of any maps found on TripAdvisor or anywhere. So I have created this one very quickly. Hopefully this might actually help people visualize a bit better where things are laid out. This ATM machine, I used it once, I only took out 20 euros. I think I got charged about 5 euros extra. This here is the restaurant, and it's the only entrance into the restaurant. I'll go into it a bit more detail later on in the video. This is the gym. You have to be over 18 to use the gym. However, 16 and 17-year-olds can go in when accompanied by an adult. This wellness centre I never saw open during our 1 week stay here. I don't know if it's open only certain times of the year or if it's not used anymore, but I believe this is where they're going to do spa treatments, massages, etc. So this is the indoor bar area, which again wasn't open during our stay. I asked reception about this. They said that they only use this bar during the colder months. I don't know which months that is, but during the colder seasons, the outdoor bar area would close at 6 p.m. and then this would open at 6 p.m. Also, if the weather is extremely bad, heavy rain, etc., then they might use this section. People tended to use this area for sitting down waiting for their coach to pick them up to take them to the airport. It's worth pointing out that there was actually only 2 seats that have a plug socket near them. So if you are waiting around for a few hours and you want to keep your phone and tablets on charge, then I suggest that you find those seats and grab them before someone else does. So before I show you the main pool area, what I'll do is I'll take you for a quick tour of the 5 main blocks, A, B, C, D and E. There is actually a 6th block which is the interconnecting part of block A and B, known as block AB. Out of curiosity, I quickly touched this slide to see how hot it was, and it was absolutely boiling, burnt my hand. I've never understood why hot countries make slides or any children's play area equipment out of metal, because obviously it gets so hot. And if you've got a child who's wearing shorts or a swimsuit and they're going down that, they're going to get burnt legs. So here behind block B is where I stumbled upon the laundry room. It's quite small, only has 2 wash machines, but I'll show you inside. So now I'll show you around the main pool area. I shot this quite early in the morning. As you can see, there's not many people about. Here you can see how deep the main pool is, and as you can see it's actually quite deep at its deepest part, 1.86 meters. The good thing about this pool is you don't simply just have to jump in. It has got a section which allows you just to walk into the pool. As you can see here, the bottom of the pool, parts of it is coming away. I'll mention that in a bit more detail later on in the video. Here you have two pool tables and your air hockey. The pool tables was €2 and the air hockey was €1. So let's show you the restaurant area, as there's been quite a lot of reviews about this. The restaurant was open for breakfast 8 till 10:30, lunch was 1 till 3, and dinner was 6:30 to 9:15. So with the restaurant, you don't just walk in, you do have to stop at the door and wait to be seated. They'll ask you for your room number, which they'll tick off. I'm not too sure if that means that you're unable to go again. For us personally, we never tried to. You do have the snack bar outside, which I'll go in more detail a bit later on. Because they show you to your seat, you may find that at its busiest periods there is a bit of a queue outside. You don't wait long, no more than a minute or two. Now before coming to this hotel, I read a lot of reviews. Some people were saying that the food was very bland, it was the same every day. What I would stress is you've got to remember this is not a gourmet restaurant, it's not a posh restaurant, it's an all-inclusive 3-star hotel. Personally, the food was absolutely fine. Now, as a family, we've stayed in quite a few TUI hotels. We've stayed in 3-star, 4-star and 5-star hotels. When making this video, I'm trying hard not to compare it. We all do it, we all compare it to other hotels, but it's not right to compare this to a 4 or 5-star hotel. You can't say it doesn't have as many options, or the food area isn't as big and large as the hotel last year. It's not fair to do that. This is a 3-star hotel. Now, like all the other TUI hotels we've stayed in, breakfast, lunch and dinner will have the majority of the same sort of things, but then have a slightly different twist. So for breakfast, it was always the same. You'll always have some sort of fry up, so you can have boiled eggs, fried eggs, scrambled eggs, beans, bacon, sausages, hash browns, but then you've got your selection of things like croissants, toast, cereals, yogurts, fruits. It's all there to cater for everyone's needs. Now for lunch and dinner, again, you will have quite a lot of the food that's available the same every day. You're always going to have the basics like pizza, hot dogs, burgers, chicken nuggets. You might have some cheese selections, meats, salad, fruit. They're always available every day for lunch and dinner. However, you will always then have several other dishes available to you. These other dishes will always consist usually of a few different meat options and vegetarian options. You then have the 2 stations where they cook the food in front of you. So for lunch and dinner, this will be fish and another meat product such as chicken, beef, pork, something like that. For breakfast, these 2 stations tend to do fried eggs and pancakes. Now, I was hoping on being able to video all the different types of food, but doing that for lunch and dinner for 7 days is quite a lot, and I found I was just getting in people's way because they're hungry, they're trying to put food on their plate, and you're just standing in their way. So I quickly snapped some photos. Hopefully this will give you some idea of what the different types of foods are available. There are quite a lot of photos, so apologies, but I know that there's been quite a lot of reviews and requests about the food, so hopefully this will help some people. So let's show you the outdoor bar area now. Apologies, I don't know what time this opens. I know the bar closes at midnight, and this is where you'll get your alcoholic drinks, your soft drinks, water. It also includes the snack bar. Again, apologies, I'm not sure what time that opens. It might be a midday, it might be 12, and closes about 5:30. Here you can view the timetable for the daily events that they do in the pool and other places, and also the evening entertainment for that day. Here's your coffee machine, which this was shot early in the morning, so it's not currently available, but here you can get your tea, coffee, etc. The good thing about this hotel is that all the beer and the soft drinks is self-serve, so you can just walk up to it. There's normally cups available and you can just help yourself and pour it, so no queuing. Any other drinks like cocktails, you do actually have to request that. This beer pump here, you can see there's a water tap. You can use that to fill up any bottles that you've got. It is filtered, so it's absolutely fine to drink. They would also normally have these bottles available, which is like a squash, a cordial that you can put into the water. However, it's very, very weak. You have to put a lot of it in to actually be able to taste it. This here is your outdoor snack area. So throughout the day, this is where you can help yourself to burgers, hot dogs, sometimes chicken nuggets, fruit, croissants type things. It's actually very nice. They also do toasted sandwiches. So the toasted sandwiches, cheese and ham. I think sometimes they do just cheese, just ham, but actually very nice. Not always the warmest, but it's very nice. And then you can also self-serve and get yourself some ice cream as well. Other ice creams are available as well to purchase. These tend to range between €2 and €4, give or take, but you can purchase those at the bar. One thing you'll see around the hotel occasionally are cats. There's not lots of them, but you will see them. They don't pester you or bother you for any food. You don't see them near the restaurant. They're not stray cats. I think they actually do live at the hotel. There are some areas like little cat beds where they can go at night to sleep. This yellow thing in front of me here is just where you can put your empty cups. Any drink left over, you can pour it also down there. Staff were very good. They went around regularly, picking up any empty cups. But it just stops any wasps and that being annoying flying around. So I'll show you the room that we stayed in, which was room A101. There was 9 of us in our group, so we actually had 3 rooms. We had room A101, 102, 103, which was actually quite handy because I could go between the rooms and just compare them. 101, 102 were exactly the same. There was a slight difference in 103, which I'll show you. You get given 2 key cards, and you have to put one of the key cards into this slot here to power the room and put the aircon on, but you can put any card you like in, and that's quite handy because when you're by the pool you can leave any card in there, leave the aircon on, so when you come back it's nice and cold. I've seen a couple of reviews asking about the hair dryers. Some people have said that they're very good, very powerful, and they've shown a picture of this one. This is the one we had in room A101 and also in A102. However, in 103, it was this hair dryer. Didn't try it, didn't test it, but it doesn't look as good or as fancy, so I'm assuming it's not as powerful. Now, although there was only 3 people staying in each of the rooms, each room also included a 4th bed, which was under the sofa. Now, I say it's a 4th bed because the sofa itself was set up like a bed. It's wide enough to be a bed, and it was actually quite comfy, actually more comfy than the pull-out bed underneath. However, in room A103, it was like this. The sofa was narrower, so I'm assuming you're not meant to be slept on it, but a bed was put out, and as you can see, it was bigger, wider, and took up more space in the room. You couldn't simply just slide it back under. Now, we'll be talking about cockroaches a little bit later at the end of this video. However, under the sink, they do provide you with a spray, which is actually a bug killer for cockroaches and any other little creepy crawlies. Now, one thing I'd recommend to everyone for any holiday is, rather than taking lots and lots of adapters with you, simply just take a 4-way extension. You can then just use one adapter, and then you're provided with 4 UK sockets, and you can just plug them in as normal like you would at home. The one slight annoying thing about this room and the other 2 rooms that we had was the power sockets. Now, there are a couple of power sockets which are in okay places, you can plug a phone in, etc. However, that mirror that you just saw was the main mirror really, where my wife would want to do makeup or her hair, and there were no real power sockets close to it. In the bedroom, as you can see, where you'd probably expect there to be a table and a mirror, there wasn't one, and there's no power sockets near there. So she had to use the one in the other room, and the nearest power socket was near that 4-way adapter that you saw. Luckily her hair straighteners, hairdryer, etc. reached, but that was the main mirror that she used. I've seen a couple of reviews saying that the chairs and tables on the patio were a bit old and needing replacing. Our ones were absolutely fine, they look quite new. As like a lot of people, I tend to take my Fire Stick with me abroad. So if you are taking your Fire Stick or Google Chromecast, they can plug in and they'll work absolutely fine with the Wi-Fi. as mentioned earlier, the plug sockets was a bit of an issue. There were no plug sockets anywhere near the TV, and the lead that I brought wasn't going to reach any plug socket nearby. Luckily for me, my power bank was quite a large, juicy power bank, and it provided enough power so I could just plug the USB, the Fire Stick, directly into this, and it was fine. You know, I could leave it on all day if I wanted to, and it would only drop by a couple of percent. Now on this TV, the HDMI ports were located underneath, so I just simply inserted it in there. There are USB ports on the side, so if you've got for the Fire Stick, you can get an adapter which powers it by the USB. That would probably work. Just remember, this is the TV I had. It may be different to what you're going to get. In room 103, for example, the TV was slightly different. Now occasionally with the Fire Stick and any device, phone, tablets, it will just disconnect you from the Wi-Fi, and if you've already registered, you simply just need to go back into it and just click login, and it will reconnect you. I did have a very quick look at what channels were available to you via the TV. There was a few English speaking ones, but the ones that I did find, to be honest, the signal wasn't the greatest, and it was occasionally just cutting out. The air conditioning worked absolutely perfect. It was very cold, to be honest. Sometimes I had to turn it down. It's a very simple one in this room, just a simple dial, turn it up and down. Remember, you've got to leave the key card in though if you're out of the room, just to leave it on. You do get a small fridge in the room, which was great, works as expected. When you arrive, they do provide you with a bottle of water. However, it's not these ones shown. It wasn't a screw cap. It wasn't able to be done back up. So if you're going to refill your bottles using the tap shown in the outside bar, you will need to go to one of the shops just to purchase a screw cap bottle. Now I'm just going to quickly show you how you'd get to the beach, because I've seen a couple of reviews asking how you go about that. There are 3 main beaches that you could walk to, taking between about 10-15 minutes. So the hotel is here, and the 3 beaches that you could probably walk to are here. Now there's a couple of ways that you could go to these beaches. Personally, if you're going to the bottom left one, I'd make use of these paths along here, which are like dirt paths, and this will take you straight to the beach. If you're going to the bottom right, I'd probably recommend that you go through this paths. Again, still dirt paths. There's only a small little section you have to walk along the road, but majority of it is just the dirt paths, and this will take you straight to the beach. And lastly, if you're going to the top right beach, which is very nice, very sandy, got sort of shops nearby and bars and stuff, then I'd recommend going this route. Here's an example of those dirt paths. It's just safer, it's nicer, you know, you're not necessarily walking along the road, and also they're lit up as well. At least it is along the side of the hotel. So if you are coming back from any of the bars late at night and it's dark, it'll be lit up. I'm now going to take you around the hotel, just walk outside and show you what sort of shops are in the immediate area. It was this video that I really wish that I brought my wind diffuser, because it's very noisy, so apologies for that. This supermarket was the one that we tended to use. This is where we'd get sweets, crisps, water for the room. It's around the back of the hotel. Unfortunately, there isn't a back entrance to the hotel. You do have to walk out the front and round, but it's only a few minutes walk. Unfortunately, due to the heat, my GoPro actually overheats, and so it will stop recording in a second. However, this is the back of the hotel. This is the football pitches and the tennis courts. I would walk just a bit further up here, take a left at the dirt path that runs along the side of the hotel, and then I'm back at the entrance. Moving on to the entertainment. The entertainment for this hotel wasn't the best, to be honest. It wasn't that the quality of the entertainment wasn't great. It was more just the duration. As I mentioned earlier with the star rating system, I read that even the length of the shows can actually qualify for 4 stars or 5-star hotels. Maybe that's partly due to the fact that they just seem so short. The kids shows started at 8 or 8:30 and it only ever really lasted half an hour. One day, maybe 2 days, there was no kids show at all. Now come 9 o'clock, 9:30 would be the main act, and there was only ever one act per night, and this tended to last about an hour. So the act might be a magician or acrobats, dancers, singers. There was one night, I think it was You Bet, it was called, off the old gay TV show, and that was actually very good, very audience engaging. However, what we found is that once the show ended, that was it. It was pretty much almost felt like chucking out time. Now, other hotels that we've stayed at, normally when the show ends, they would still maybe keep the music on so people can stick around, have a couple of more drinks, play Uno, whatever they wanted to do. The bar remains open till midnight. However, it almost felt like they were just trying to get rid of you. There was no music whatsoever. Of course, they left the lights on, but a lot of people obviously just got up and left. So we would go outside to the outside bar, which did have a few people there. This video was shot about 11 o'clock at night, and again, everyone had left. Now I appreciate, a lot of people have families with young kids, they probably want to go to bed, but we always stay in TUI hotels, there's always kids, and we've never really experienced this before. By 11 o'clock it's just dead. Again, there's no music, no atmosphere. Any music you can hear ever so slightly in the background is actually coming from one of our phones. So what's it like getting a sunbed then, first thing in the morning in this hotel? It's not actually as bad as we first thought. On our very first morning, we didn't bother trying to get a sunbed. We slept in a bit, and we just like to explore the hotel, so we didn't try. On the second morning, I happened to wake up about 6 a.m. and I looked out the curtain and I could see quite a lot of people already down there putting sunbeds. And of course you think, oh great, it's one of these hotels where you'll get up stupidly early. So of course, annoyingly, if everyone's doing it, you've got to do it to be able to get a sunbed. So there we were, 6 a.m. on the first morning trying to get a sunbed, and like I say, there was lots of people doing it. The next morning we set our alarm for 6 a.m. and it was completely different. It was, empty, hardly no one down there. I think it doesn't take a lot of people probably to sort of be early risers to go get the sunbed for other people to sort of panic and set the trend. This video was shot about 8 o'clock, I think it was, and there was still quite a few sunbeds left. I think, about 7:30, definitely 7 a.m. you can get, a good sunbeds in good positions. I can't promise it'll be exactly the same when you guys go, but for us, 7:30, 7 a.m. definitely was a good time to get a sunbed. Now, many would argue that's still far too early, but compared to some hotels, that's actually not too bad. So, time to talk about the cockroaches. This is what everyone fears and sees on all the reviews. Personally, it was nowhere near as bad as what I thought it was going to be. Cockroaches don't bother me. When on our first day there, we did see a couple on the paths, but it's Lanzarote, it's a hot country. They get cockroaches. We don't really get them here in the UK. So, of course, when you go abroad and you see one, I think people tend to panic and think it's, a disgusting hotel, it's dirty. It's not. It's a hot country. That's what you get them there, unfortunately. Now, in our room, A101, we only got one cockroach. I don't know how it got in because the doors are sealed shut. There's no gap at the bottom of the door, the front door. But we got one and it was fine. It was already dead. I don't know why, but it was already dead. In one of our rooms, A102, unfortunately, a family member there did get about 6 or 7, always in the bathroom. Again, don't know how it was getting there because she was putting the plugs in the sinks and the bath and that, but sometimes she'd wake up and she'd either find a live one or a dead one, and she just simply put a glass over it, called me, and then of course I chucked it out the balcony. I think the hotel probably does do something to try and stop the cockroaches because, as I said, quite often when you do find one, it's already dead. So maybe they're putting stuff down to sort of try and keep them away or kill them off. Now, you may have noticed I'm looping the same 2 videos that I've got of the cockroaches over and over because during our 7-day stay there, I didn't really see that many, apart from the ones, as I said, a family member had in her bathroom. I didn't really see that many. My biggest advice, and I appreciate everyone is going to react differently to the cockroaches, and as I said, they don't really bother me, but my biggest advice is don't let it worry you, don't let it bother you. I don't think it's anywhere near as bad as what people say or people are, posting on reviews. Remember, there is a spray underneath the sink which you can then use to kill it, and from what I've read in the reviews, you can always go to the reception and ask them to either give you a spray if you haven't got one, or ask them to actually remove the cockroach for you if no one wants to do it. So, what are my closing thoughts about this hotel? As I said right at the very start of the video, I think this hotel is fine. As I said, it's a 3-star hotel and it's got everything that you want for a decent priced family holiday. The all-inclusive food, in my opinion, was fine. Have I seen better? Yes, but again, that's sort of comparing it to maybe a 4 or even a 5-star hotel, and that's not fair. There's plenty to choose from. I can't believe that anyone would be able to walk into that restaurant and not find something that they would like to eat. On one of the days, I'm not saying this was everyone's ideal solution, but on one of the days, in fact that's maybe 2, there was food that I would eat, but actually I thought, you know what, I'm just going to have a nice simple burger, or one of the other days I thought I'm just going to have nice pizza and chips, something simple, because the food, if I had to, I could eat it, but given the choice, and then like I say, there's plenty to choose from, I thought no, I'm going to go with the easy option and have a nice burger or a nice pizza and chips. The drinks, plenty to choose from. The one thing I would say are the cocktails. Now, the hotels that I've stayed in, normally there's either been 2 options. Some hotels have the cocktails which are freshly made in front of you. Great, lovely, but can be time consuming. One of the hotels, TUI Hotel, they had a machine which, they would just push a button and it would make the cocktail, and it was fine actually, they weren't too bad. This hotel is different. Their cocktails come out of the hand dispenser like they would, in a pub that you're filling up Coke or something. I was quite surprised to see that. To be honest, their cocktails are not the nicest. I'm not a big cocktail drinker, but I do, appreciate a nice one, and the cocktails weren't that great. What I would suggest is that people, if you wanted to, you can actually ask them to make up sort of different drinks. Maybe not a full-blown cocktail, but if you wanted sort of rum and coke or gin and lemonade, or something different, you can actually ask them to make that instead. The self-service beer and soft drinks is brilliant. Again, I've been to hotels where they do that and others where they don't, but it's so much easier just being able to walk up to the bar, and the kids as well, just being able to walk up and get themselves a coke or lemonade, whatever they want to do. When you get a drink from the outside bar, they will give you a plastic cup. However, inside they do give you glass, which again is quite nice. The lack of late checkout is a bit of a bummer, to be honest, especially if you've got a late flight. We were getting picked up at 5 p.m, and of course the family and the kids want to spend that last day around the pool, but you're going to be all sweaty, covered in sun cream, and they don't have a shower room, which personally was very annoying. There are 2 showers available around the pool. Neither of them worked great, but what I'd recommend is use those showers to the best of your ability. Like I say, one I think was working okay, but the other one was a bit rubbish. Use that to the best of your ability. Keep shampoo to the side and the spare clothes. When you have a late checkout, you can put your luggage into the room next to the reception, and you can go in and out as much as you want. So you can keep a bag full of spare clothes like we did, put that in with your luggage, and then when you need to, just quickly go back and grab it. There were lockers available in the luggage room if you need it for your phones, tablets or anything, but unfortunately these were €2, and if you needed to open it, you'd lose your money and you have to spend another €2 to reuse it. To get changed, unfortunately you can only do that in the toilets really. I'd recommend using the toilets downstairs near the gym because they're slightly bigger, or better still, what we did is use the disabled toilets, which are to the side of the reception, and that's much bigger and more room to get changed in. I'd recommend the Waterpark, which is just down the road. It's about 15-20 minute walk, not far. We had pre-booked it. When you get there, it was a little bit confusing because there was 2 queues, and we thought one was for paying on the day, which is a little bit more expensive, and one for prepay. We prepaid it. I think it was about €100. I'm not too sure because we have a 13-year-old. I think he was considered as an adult, so I think it was 3 adults and 1 child. So that works out about £80. Some of the pool activities that I saw was the water bridge where people ran across, which the kids loved. Dancing / aerobics and water polo. The water polo was actually quite good. It was a mixture of adults and kids. Sometimes they'll separate them, sometimes they only do adults and no kids, but the water polo did allow the kids as well. My son was in there, again he was 13, so I'm not sure what the age cut-off is. When booking this through TUI, they actually gave us 3 requests that you could ask for, and I've forgotten what all the requests were, but the 3 that we requested was we were on the ground floor, all rooms were close to each other, and we were close to the pool. About a week or 2 before the holiday, we actually emailed this address and just asked for the same things again, just sort of asking if this is possible. They got back to us very quickly saying that they would try their best to accommodate us. Now I don't know if it was the email that helped or if it was just a simple request through TUI, but we did have all 3 rooms next to each other, we were on the ground floor, and we were close to the pool. I mentioned earlier about the bottom of the pool having some of it coming away. I've even read reviews that some people may have even cut their foot on it. I shot this under the water, as you can see. This is the sort of middle of the pool. There was some coming away as well to the entrance of the pool. I was rubbing my foot all around it and I didn't think it was sharp at all. I mean, I didn't cut myself. I swam down there, touched it with my fingers. I don't believe it to be really sort of hazardous or an issue. Again, apologies if anyone out there has experienced differently and they did cut themselves, but from what I've felt and what I sort of saw, it was absolutely fine. Didn't pose any issues with the kids. So the last thing I'd like to mention really is just about the blocks that you can stay in. So I mentioned before that there are different blocks, A, B, C, D and E. I know that block A was a nicer one because that's where I stayed, and a lot of people have written good reviews about that. Block B, I spoke to a lady who was staying in Block B and she said her room was very nice. I can't vouch for the other blocks. I do have a sneaky suspicion that Block D and E are the older style blocks. When I was walking around them, I tended to notice that there was more cracks in the ceiling or in the walls or marks on the door compared to A and B, and maybe even C as well. So if you do write an email to the hotel, apologies if it doesn't work, apologies if I'm wrong, but I do believe that A, B and possibly C tend to be the nicer blocks. So to sum everything up, this hotel, in my opinion, for the 7 days that we stayed there, August 2026, was absolutely fine and completely adequate for a fun family holiday. Have I been in better hotels? Yes, but I know I'm comparing those to a 4-star or even a 5-star hotel. I'd have to look back and see what 3-star hotels we've stayed in to compare it against. But, you know, the food was absolutely fine, more than enough choice for us and the kids, although the kids tend to eat the same thing every day, but pizza, pasta, chips. But it was more than enough for definitely the kids, the adults. The weather was absolutely fine. It was very hot. It was about 30 degrees for us every single day, sometimes a little bit hotter. On that note, it is very windy. As you can see in this video here, it is quite windy. Now, the wind isn't a cold wind. It doesn't make you cool. If anything, it's actually probably a little bit more dangerous because it does cool you down a bit, and so you don't realise if you're burning, but it doesn't really affect you during the day. At night though, we did notice it was actually a little bit chilly. You know, sometimes you probably want to either put a cardigan, a jumper on or something, you know, not a thick woolly jumper, but just something to just cover you up a little bit, cover your arms, because when you're sitting there at night, especially if you're walking to the bars and stuff down the road, then it can be a little bit breezy. So on that note, if you book in this hotel or you're thinking about booking this hotel, hopefully you found this video helpful and it's answered a lot of questions. I've tried to cover a majority of things that I've seen in reviews. Apologies, it wasn't the shortest of videos. It's gone a lot longer than I thought it was going to. But if there's any questions, you can write in the comments and ask me anything. But again, hopefully if you do book it, you'll have a great time and enjoy it like we did.
Bye everyone, have a great holiday.